the ones that a lot of people trade in, like for instance, your US dollar, your pounds for the UK, England, and then euros is all the EU countries. So that is including your France, your Italy, your Germany, and like your Spain as well. So all of them, the main currency that they trade in with other countries is euros. So with the other ones is Australia, you get your New Zealand dollars, your Canadian, and you also have Botswana in our African ones. And then your Zambian, your basically every country has its own currency that they would prefer to trade in. So what happens is that with all these currencies, in South Africa, we have what we call the South African Reserve Bank. So they are the governor that controls all the currencies. So the role of the Reserve Bank is to be able to control how currency is being utilized, how currency is being used in South Africa. So when people come through the country, you'll hear people saying South Africa has very strict currency exchange control, because of in other countries you can just go just outside and get somebody to just sell you currency, and they are able to just buy that currency from you without having all the paperwork, without having all the necessary. But in South Africa, that is not possible because of we do have strict rules, and that is being controlled by the South African Reserve Bank. So basically, how it works is that for you to be able to say that you want to trade in in a currency, or you want to be able to sell people foreign exchange, you have to go through the Reserve Bank to get authorized. And once you get that license, you are therefore being called an authorized dealer. So if you are an authorized dealer, you trade under a certain license, and that license, it has its own conditions, whether you are able to sell currency, or whether you are able to buy currency. So that is the role of the Reserve Bank. So they monitor all of that. So they control the currency, and they also check in terms of, for instance, how many because of our local currency is rand. So if you come in US dollars, you can't buy with US dollars. You have to be able to change into our local currency. So the Reserve Bank checks the circulation of the money in the country, and that is just a simple demand and supply rule, whereby if ever there's a lot of money circulating, that is why we will see the price increase, because of there's a lot of money that is in circulation. So the Reserve Bank will look into those things to say, no, if ever there's a lot of money, let us stop. Because I think in life we've all asked ourselves, if the money is just being printed, why can't more money be printed? So basically that is what the Reserve Bank does. They make sure that they control that. So if they see, no, 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 there's a lot of money in circulation now, so then we will see the price hikes, we will see the interest rate. So the Reserve Bank obviously sets the repo rate, which is the rate that the Reserve Banks uh, borrows money to the local banks. And then once the local banks gets the repo rate, then they set up their own rate, which will be the prime rate. Are we all still together, ladies? Is there anything on your side before I continue? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So for instance, I'll just make an example. So if ever maybe for instance our repo rate is 8, like at the moment is sitting at 8.25, ne? And then the Reserve Bank borrows the local bank, say 1,000 rand, ne? So we just take that 1,000 rand, we multiply it by that repo rate, which is 8.25. And what the local bank will pay back to the Reserve Bank is that 1,000 plus 82 rand 50, which would be the interest paid back to the Reserve Bank. And then when they have that 1,000, they will have to add their prime rate in order for them to borrow to the local consumers, which is us, when we go to the banks and we ask for a loan or anything like that. So that is how the money gets circulated. So when they see that there's too much money and there's too much of that circulation, that's when we will see that the Reserve Bank will increase the repo rate. So that's how we get affected. So because of the Reserve Bank is trying to control that, all of us or all of the dealers, they are making sure that we trade, because of, if we trade in the local currency, that in turn it has a direct effect on our economy. So if ever there is more people coming through, that is why we encourage investments for people to come through into the country and invest, because of that is money coming through to the country. And when money comes through into the country, it's good for the economy, because of now people will be able to get more jobs, people are able to spend, and the money is therefore circulating. Okay, so in terms of the exchange control, so the exchange control, it was established by the Reserve Bank in 1933, but it was put in place in 1961. So we've had exchange control in South Africa. So that is why our rules in terms of foreign exchange have been very stringent as to who can trade and how they can trade. So there's a department within the Reserve Bank. It's called the Financial Surveillance. So that is the department that is controlling the local banks in terms of the specific rules when money is being exchanged into the bank. So the procedure with the banks is that if ever, for instance, you are traveling and you are going abroad, like now we are on the traveling season, so you want to change, say maybe for instance you're going to Thailand. So what should happen is that you should be traveling within 60 days. So you can't, for instance, if you're traveling next year, say in June, but the rate is good now. So you can't go now and say, I want to buy because of the rate is good. So it has to be within 60 days of your travel. So you have only 2 months in advance that you can buy your currency. So that is why we have to look at how every single time you look at how the currency is doing. But you can only buy it only within your 60 days of travel. So hence when you go to the bank, they need to see your flight ticket for them to be able to know that your trip, it is within the 60 days. Therefore they are able to sell the currency to you. And you would also need your passport. So in terms of the visas, that depends on the country that you are visiting. So a lot of for instance, the lot of the airlines, sometimes they have a stopover via Dubai, so they might want you to have a visa for Dubai because of you'll have a stopover. But that is according to the destination, and then when you purchase your air ticket as well, that will be according to the airline if you have a stopover, and then you will find out from the embassy if ever you are doing your visa, for you to know that would you need to have a visa for that stopover. But the most important thing is that I think, especially for the Europe ones, is to get a Schengen visa. So the Schengen visa, it opens all the European countries. So for instance, you go into Belgium, but if you get a Schengen visa, you can be able to go to France, you can go to Netherlands. So you can just get a train and then be able to get through other countries without having to get all this visas for all these countries. So for Europe, it's a Schengen visa. So you just go to the embassy and say, can I have a Schengen visa? And that will be able to open up for you. But for countries like Australia, that is specific. And also for the US, that is specific. But for countries like our African countries, there isn't much visa that is needed. The only thing is that you have to do a bit of a research. It's good to speak to the travel agents just for them to give you a background as to, maybe in terms of the vaccines, in terms of the injections that you can take for that for that country, and then you are able to do that. But other than that, you don't need to have a visa for those countries. Are we all still together? Okay. So the exchange rates. So for instance, the rate that we see on the news, So that is the exchange rate that the Reserve Bank sets for the banks. So the reason I tried to explain it with the repo, I needed you guys to just have a background to say that as much as the when we see the repo, that is the rate that the banks borrows to the Reserve Bank, and then they give us at a prime rate. So it's the same like the exchange rate that we see. So if we see that on the news that the dollar is 19 rands today, so that doesn't mean that is the rate that you will go and get with the bank or the other authorized dealers like your Travelex or your Western Unions. So those are bureau de changes. So that is not the rate. That is the rate that they buy from the Reserve Bank. So on top of that, they add like a two base, one base, 1.5 base, and then for them to be able to make a profit from that. So I think a lot of people get confused as to if we see that the dollar is 18 rand and we go to the banks, we go to the bureau de changes, we expect to buy the dollar with that 18 rand, but that is not the rate. So that is the rate that the Reserve Bank is setting for for the bureau de change. So that's what the banks will buy from the Reserve Bank, and then they will also have to sell it at a slightly higher price because of they also need to make profit. So does that make sense, guys? So when they set that rate, it all differs. There's a strict stringent as to how far they can go, but for instance, they can say up until 2.5 base. So for instance, if ever the rate is sitting at 18 rands straight to the dollar, we can't go to the bank and then the bank gives us at a 19 rand 50. So they give them a base to say they can only go thus far. So maybe they can go up until 18.75. So that is why you'll see it will trade between 1850 to 18.75 in other, depending on where you go. If you are busy going from one bureau to change to the other, but then that one, it will help you just for you to be able to understand.